In this video, we are going to discuss the supergroup of protists known as Chromalveolata. The supergroup Chromalveolata can be further divided into two subgroups, the alveolates and the straminophiles. Within the alveolates, we are also going to discuss some further subgroups known as dinoflagellates, epicomplexians, and ciliates. And within the straminophiles, we are going to talk about diatoms, brown algae, golden algae, and oomycetes. So starting with the alveolates, the general characteristic of this group of protists is a membrane-enclosed sac known as an alveolus. And if you're familiar with anatomy and physiology, inside human lungs, you have these kind of like pockets where gas exchange occurs. And these little pockets or sacs are known as alveoli. So that term in science kind of means like a little sac. And this alveolus located beneath the cell membrane, we don't really know what the function is, but it might be involved in osmoregulation. And osmoregulation just has to do with the balance of solutes and water within an organism. The first specific type of alveolate are the dinoflagellates. And these are a fairly diverse group of protists. They can be photosynthetic, heterotrophic, or mixotrophic. They are reddish or orangish in color due to secondary endosymbiosis of red algae. So remember that secondary endosymbiosis has to happen after primary endosymbiosis. So the red algae went through primary endosymbiosis when it engulfed another cell, and then the dinoflagellates engulfed the red algae for the secondary level of endosymbiosis. These protists are classified by two interlocking cellulose plates on the surface, and you can kind of see that here. They also have two flagella. One of them extends kind of longitudinally from the body. The other one actually wraps around the cell itself, and this allows for a spinning motion to occur. These cells also have something called a dinokaryon, which is a variant of a nucleus. So it's similar to a nucleus, but the chromosomes never become uncondensed. They stay condensed throughout the cell cycle, and the nuclear membrane does not break down during mitosis. Continuing our discussion of the dinoflagellates, first of all, they can live in freshwater or saltwater, and they contribute to plankton, which remember, plankton are just these really small organisms. Oftentimes they're unicellular and sometimes even microscopic that are kind of at the mercy of tides and waves with regards to travel. Now, some dinoflagellates are bioluminescent, and bioluminescence just means that they can give off light. So you can see this picture here, you see this kind of blue color in the waves of this water, and that is the bioluminescence. This is more often seen in kind of tropical and subtropical areas, but we can see it off the coast of South Carolina at times as well. And it's really neat. So if you're ever on the beach at night, especially if you're in a warmer area like the Bahamas or Florida even, if you go to the edge of the water and kind of move your feet in the sand, you might notice that it kind of sparkles with like a blue or a green color. And that's often due to these dinoflagellates that are in that wet sand. I actually went bioluminescent kayaking down in Florida one time, and every time we put our paddle in the water would light up from all of the disturbed dinoflagellates. It was really, really cool. Some dinoflagellates also contribute to this phenomenon known as red tide. And this is something that, once again, we typically see in more tropical waters. It often affects Florida in the United States. And these dinoflagellates are actually harmful, and they perform these harmful, or they develop these harmful algal blooms. Um, and this red tide releases these toxins, and these toxins are dangerous to fish, but they can also become airborne and become dangerous to humans and other animals as well. So if there's a red tide breakout in an area, the beaches are often closed so that people don't swim in it and get exposed to those toxins. Another type of alveolate is an apicomplexion, and these are parasitic protists. And they have this apical complex, which is a modified chlorophyll that actually helps them to infect their host cells, because remember, they are parasitic. One example is Plasmodium, and this is a apicomplexion that causes malaria. So these little purple areas in here are the protists that are causing malaria. And these kind of bigger cells here, these are red blood cells. So malaria is a protist that is transferred by mosquitoes from one organism to another. And the protist gets into the blood and it can actually damage the red blood cells, and it can cause problems like anemia. And it's actually one of the kind of most dangerous protists, I believe, in the world. It kills millions of people every year. Another subgroup of the alveolates are the ciliates, and their name kind of tells you that they are covered in cilia. And remember that cilia are these little protein fiber extensions that are sticking out of the cell membrane. These cilia can aid in movement, so it can actually help the ciliate to move around in its environment. It can also work as almost like a suction where it can create a wave to bring food towards itself as well. Ciliates may have a pellicle, which is kind of like a coating around them that provides protection. They also have contractile vacuoles, which you can see on the picture here. These are involved in osmoregulation. So essentially, they can fill with water or they can contract to expel water out of the organism. Ciliates also have two nuclei. They have a macronucleus, which is involved in protein synthesis, and a micronucleus that is involved in sexual reproduction. They have an oral groove or a mouth pore, as you can see here. And in this area, they can engulf food through endocytosis. And remember, they can use their cilia to essentially create a current of water that brings food towards that mouth pore or oral groove. They also have an anal pore, which is how they can eliminate waste via exocytosis. And one example of a ciliate is the paramecium, which you can see in the picture down here. So now we're moving on to the straminophiles. And the protists in the straminophile group, some of them are photosynthetic marine algae, others are heterotrophic, and some can actually be mixotrophic as well. One defining feature of straminophiles is that they have two flagella, one of which has kind of a hairy appearance to it, and the other one is smooth. One type of straminophile are the diatoms. And diatoms are these unicellular organisms that are encased in these glassy cell walls. So you can see in this picture here, these are kind of the cell walls that are left behind of these individual diatoms after they die. And these cell walls are made of silicon dioxide. Diatoms may also have a raphe, which is a slit through which mucopolysaccharides are emitted. If we look at muco, we can determine that this has to do with kind of a mucus-like substance. These mucopolysaccharides help the diatom attach to surfaces and move around. Interestingly, there's actually a product that you can buy at places like Home Depot or Lowe's called diatomaceous earth. And what diatomaceous earth is it's just these kind of these cell walls, so the silicon dioxide cell walls. And so diatom tells you it has to do with diatoms. And you can actually spread this around your house in order to kill off insects. And it's interesting because it's not a it's not a chemical poison. It's actually a physical substance that kills the insect. So when I used to live out in Phoenix, we would get scorpions, and scorpions are pretty much immune to most chemical insecticides. But diatomaceous earth, what it is these little kind of silicon pieces of glass. It's almost like fiberglass. And as the scorpion would crawl across the diatomaceous earth, these little fibers, or these little glassy fibers, would get lodged inside the joints of their exoskeleton, and it would kill them that way. And these diatoms, when they're alive, they are associated with freshwater and saltwater plankton. Another straminopile are the golden algae. They are typically unicellular, but they may form colonies. So here you can see a colony of golden algae with the individual protist making up each of these cells here. Golden algae is golden in color, and that color comes from carotenoids, which are photosynthetic pigments. And carotenoids tend to be kind of a yellow or orange color. And golden algae also contributes to freshwater and saltwater plankton. Another type of straminopile are the brown algae, and the most well known are probably the kelp that are found primarily in the Pacific Ocean. So these are marine or saltwater organisms. They are multicellular and they can be huge. So you can see the fish here for reference. So the kelp here, this can be several hundred meters long or tall. They do have they are classified as seaweed, but they are similar to terrestrial plants in some way. They have root-like holdfasts, which you can see that in the picture here. So they can actually be rooted or attached to the substrate at the bottom of the ocean. They have these stem-like stipes, which you can see here. And then they have these leaf-like blades for photosynthesis. And what you're seeing in this picture here are a whole bunch of these together forming this kind of kelp forest. Another type of straminopile are the Oomycetes, and I apologize for the typo here. So this should be Oomycetes. And these are water molds, and they're actually similar to fungus in their structure or morphology. They have a cellulose-based cell wall and a filament that aids in nutrient uptake. So they actually have two flagella that are on opposite sides of them, and the flagella help with motility. Some of them are saprobes, which are the decomposers. So they help to break down dead organic matter, and some of them are parasitic. Most of them are aquatic, but some can actually parasitize terrestrial plants. And the potato blight that caused the Irish potato famine in the 1800s was caused by a type of oocytes known as Phytophthora infestans. So in review, in talking about the supergroup, the Chromalveolata, We discussed two separate subgroups of the alveolates and the straminophiles. We then talked about three different types of alveolates. We talked about dinoflagellates, epicomplexians, and ciliates. And with the straminophiles, we talked about four kind of subgroups. So we talked about the diatoms. We talked about the brown algae. We talked about golden algae. And we talked about the oomycetes.